But this is 4th of July in 2 days. And I thought something like this was more appropriate than anything else to get a little bit of an understanding about the creation of this great country. And as Tom said in his prayer, each and every one of us hit the lottery. I mean, you know, Rich Mancuso could have been born in Nigeria. Maybe if I was, I would have been president. Well, anyway, I take that one back. Gentlemen, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gary Mitchell. I'm a member of Sons of the American Revolution, and we are here. Chip Dawes, he'll be talking also. We'll split this up. If you have any questions, sort of hold them till the end if you can. And at the end, we've got displays up here with muskets. One of them is an original Rev War musket, and a Charleville and a Brown Bess. So there are 2 replicas and 1 RT, the real thing, with some other things that go with it. Chip is wearing the accessories on his body. Mine are out here on the table. So that's what he would look like, what I would look like if we were in combat. So, Washington's Life Guards. It's the first elite military unit in the U.S. Army. It was created by George Washington, and as we'll go through, we'll talk about that. But it was served from 1776 to 1784. Here's our talk, what we're going to be talking about. We've got the introduction, which we're trying to do now, the origin of the Guard, the qualifications for its members, which are very interesting because they were dictated by George Washington, the period of active duty. There was treason within the Guard. One of the original members tried to kill George Washington, and he was hung with his conspirators. And we're not sure what happened to his fellow conspirators. They don't know if they were hung or not, but Mr. Hickey, who was the gentleman, was hung in front of 20,000 spectators in 1776 in June. So we just missed his anniversary. Then we have John Dawes, that's Chip's 5th great-grandfather.
Yep.
We have William Logan, who is my 5th great-grandfather. We have at Valley Forge. We'll talk about the muskets, the battles, and we'll give you a quick summary. So off we go.
Oh, great. So the Commander-in-Chief's Guard was the official title of the unit. It was also known as the General's Guard, Washington's Life Guard, Washington's Bodyguard. Washington referred to them simply as my guard. Captain Gibbs, he was captain when he started at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. He was promoted to major by the time the war was over. He was the Commandant of the Commander-in-Chief's Guard, or CNC Guard as he signed it. The origin of the Guard, it was one of Washington's general orders from Cambridge, Massachusetts, March 11, 1776. So at the beginning of the U.S. Army, the Continental Army, he specified that he wanted a uniform group of young men who looked good. He wanted the Guard to be a model, and he wanted them all about the same height and physically fit and attractive. And they would serve as a model unit then for the rest of the Army. Go ahead. General Washington appointed Captain Caleb Gibbs, who was from Massachusetts, as the Commandant of the Commander-in-Chief's Guard. The mutiny that Gary had referenced was when the Guard was originally formed, there were members from all of the various colonies. And there was a man, Thomas Hickey, who had served in the French and Indian War. He was an Irishman, and he served in the British Army in the French and Indian War. And we believe he was a sergeant in the Guard. Most of the records referred to him as a private. He was busted down to private when he was convicted of treason and then hung. He was jailed in June of 1776 for passing counterfeit money. And while in jail, he conveyed information to another prisoner about a plan to kill General Washington. Well, the other prisoner brought that to the attention of the guards. Thomas Hickey was then court-martialed and was the first person to be executed for treason in the United States in June of 1776. It was in New York City. 20,000 people were in attendance. George Washington was there. He commented after the hanging that, this is nasty business, but it must be done. And then he turned around and left. He didn't want to dwell on it, but understood it was necessary.
And after this, they reconstituted the guards.
So when they reconstituted the guards, they didn't want any foreign-born soldiers. They wanted all native-born soldiers. In fact, they were all Virginians. 174, I believe. My fifth great-grandfather and Gary's fifth great-grandfather were both among that group.
Our ancestors knew each other 250 years ago. And we know each other today.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Yeah. We'll get to some of our genealogy, how we trace back. But both of our genealogical paths started out in Virginia, went through Missouri, and ended up here in Colorado. So, yeah, interesting. Let's go ahead and, Captain Gibbs was the one who was responsible for securing the uniforms. George Washington, in his orders, gave Captain Gibbs the orders to go to the quartermaster and get uniforms. He wanted blue coat with buff turnouts, like the one I'm wearing, because that's the style that General Washington wore. He wanted buff-colored breeches, because that's what General Washington wore. Captain Gibbs went to the quartermaster. The only breeches available were white, so he had them dyed with coffee into the buff color.
And there were separate, different buff colors throughout the unit.
Yeah. It wasn't as, quality control wasn't quite the same then as it is today. General Washington did not want red vests, but that was all the quartermaster had available, so that's what Captain Gibbs secured. We don't know what General Washington's take on that was, but we do know that the red vests were worn proudly throughout the rest of the conflict as a symbol for the Guard.
And that really became the symbol of the Guard. All the pictures that you see, if they're in color, they'll see the red vest if they're Washington's Life Guards members.
The other unique or distinctive piece of clothing that they had in their uniform, they did not usually wear the tricorn hats like this that most of the soldiers wore. They wore a dragoon helmet. There was a shipment of dragoon helmets that were captured.
There they are.
They were repurposed for the Guard.
Behind you, Chip.
Oh, here we are. Yeah. So there's a replica we see here. There was a light blue color band that was worn around it, like you see in the flag down here. And they had a white ostrich plume that was tipped in blue. And that distinctive headgear was also unique to the Guard and was worn proudly throughout the conflict. Evolution of the final uniform. One of the other unique things about the uniform is the buttons that we have say USA. And the Commander-in-Chief's Guard was the first unit in the U.S. Army to use buttons that said USA.
They aren't sure what the origin of that is, but they had just minted a 1-penny coin that said USA on it, and they believe that that might have been the model that they took for the buttons. But they were the first buttons that said USA.
I have a question.
Sure.
Did USA stand for U.S. Army or United States?
United States of America at that point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
They had just, the Continental Congress had just passed the Declaration, and they were moving forward, and it stood for the United States of America.
Yeah. Technically, the coin that we all call a penny and know colloquially as a penny, it's actually a 1-cent coin. A penny relates to a pence, but we've always called them pennies. But they're technically a 1-cent coin. And they were authorized by the Second Continental Congress and were originally minted shortly before the buttons were designed for this uniform.
Excuse me, did they fight with those uniforms?
Yes.
This is all we had to wear. There was nothing else. The militia folks marched in their everyday clothes. If I was a militiaman, I'd be in what I wore every day. The Continental Army's uniforms were blue coats with white trim. There's one other side note. If you look and see musicians in the Continental Regiment or company, they're wearing red coats,
Just
not
the
blue
opposite
coats,
colors.
just the opposite. And that reason is because at the time, Napoleonic tactics were the major way that wars were fought in Europe. And the British and the Americans, basically from the French and Indian War, knew about Napoleonic tactics, which is long lines and that sort of thing. Well, the only way orders were given by captains and commanders was through drums and bugles. They couldn't be heard above the shooting and all the noise of a battle, but they could hear drums and bugles to give commands to the troops. The musicians wore different color coats, so they weren't supposed to be shot. And
It was
in
also
Europe,
so the commander could quickly
find
identify
them.
the musician.
But it was
so he
also
could give
to
the orders.
avoid being shot. It was ungentlemanly to shoot a musician during that time period in warfare. Things have changed.
Another change that happened. Today we think of the military wearing their BDUs or battle dress uniforms, camos. They want to blend in with the background. You know, the way that fighting happened during the Revolutionary War, you didn't want to blend in the background, you wanted to stand out. And you wanted to look sharp and cool as you marched through town. You wanted to be the model that people would look to and be impressed with. So the uniforms were bright and stood out and were not at all anything like modern uniforms that would be more camouflage.
That was also not only to look sharp, but in a line of soldiers facing the enemy, you would look very dominant in terms of if you all looked exactly alike, firing your weapons. It's just another thing that people sort of looked to.
So, as we mentioned, Washington in his orders says, I desire that none of the men may exceed in stature 5 feet 10 inches, nor fall short of 5 feet 9 inches. Sober, young, active, and well made. He wanted sharp young men that would stand out as a model force.
And those who had family connections to the country.
He was taller than that.
Himself couldn't qualify.
Correct.
Neither did Thomas Jefferson.
They were both taller. Yes.
But 5'8" to 5'10" was very tall during the Revolution because about the average height of men back then was around 5'4", 5'5". So these were big guys, and he wanted an impressive unit. Didn't go over 6 foot because there were darn few of them.
Also, he wanted to give preference to those who have family connections in the country. So my ancestor, John Dawes, his mother-in-law is actually first cousin to Thomas Jefferson. I'm a descendant of Judith Jefferson Farrar, Thomas Jefferson's aunt. So the connections that my ancestor had were close to that of Thomas Jefferson. I must insist that in making this choice of natives and men of some property, that you give no intimation of my preference of natives. I don't want to create any invidious distinction between them and foreigners. So he wanted just native-born soldiers, but he didn't want to make a big deal of it because he didn't want to create any dissension in the ranks.
And when they formed the units, he put out the command for each regiment to send 4 soldiers to his camp. And he would select those he wanted from those 4 soldiers from each regiment. So you got selected as one of the 4, or some of the 4 of the regiment. Then you went to George Washington's headquarters, and he selected the soldiers that he picked for the unit from there. And we saw the hats already. There's the flag.
Oh, one more.
Oh, it's not going. Why isn't
Try
it going?
backing up and going forward again. Uh-oh.
We're stuck.
Yeah, let's see if...
It worked fine for a while. No, it's not.
Maybe it's on the
Nothing's moving.
Oh, here we are. Let's just run
Yep.
with it from here. So the flag, the regimental flag, was the one that Gary has here. The motto was "Conquer or Die," and you see Lady Liberty there, together with a member of the Guard, and Washington's personal flag. His personal flag was a light blue background with white stars on it. If you look at the Medal of Honor today, that light blue that's in the Medal of Honor, that was the color in his flag.
And this flag is the first flag to fly over the U.S. Army on January 1, 1776. It's called the Grand Union Flag. George Washington ordered it to be flown. He had them sew 7 white stripes on a British Navy Jack. So that's a British Navy Jack flag. That's why the canton is a British flag. But he sewed the white stripes on it to make 13 red and white stripes. And that was January 1st, 1776. That flew above the Army until late in 1777, after Congress, the Second Continental Congress, passed the first Flag Act, denoting 13 red and white stripes, a blue canton with 13 stars, and they didn't define a pattern. So there's all kinds of national flags from the Revolutionary War that aren't just Betsy Ross. She's got the most publicity, had a good agent apparently.
That Flag Act was passed on June 14th of 1777. That's why June 14th is Flag Day. This is the lineage of myself, so I'll run through this real quick. I have 2 sons, Zachary and Charlie. There's me, my father, who was born in Jackson County, Tennessee. His father, Bill Dawes, was born in Jackson County, Tennessee. His father, my great-grandfather, Oliver Dawes, was born in Conejos County, Colorado. His parents were homesteading in the San Luis Valley in late 1800s. He was born 1890. I've got a copy of his birth certificate from Conejos County. His father, John Dawes, was born in Jackson County, Tennessee. His father, William Dawes, was born in Mecklenburg County, Virginia. His father, Thomas, from Mecklenburg County, Virginia. And John Dawes, my patriot ancestor who served in the Commander-in-Chief's Guard, was from Mecklenburg County. It's the portion, when he was born, it was Lunenburg County, but he was in the part that became Mecklenburg County when Lunenburg County split. And if we can advance.
Chip, were they from England before they came here then?
The name Dawes is an English name. I can go back to John Dawes' father was James Dawes. I don't have records beyond that. I have James Dawes showing up in some probate records in the 1840s, in fact 1840. I've seen the Dawes name as early as the second supply ship to Jamestown, but I don't have any connection from John's father, James, further back. It's a burnt record county, so the records aren't very clear. The records all got burnt during the Civil War. So this area down here is where Mecklenburg County is. So they were in very southern part of Virginia. If anyone knows of that area, that's also where Field Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson's uncle, where he lived. John Dawes' wife was Elizabeth Moore. John and Elizabeth had 10 children. I have a copy of his will, lists all 10 of them. Elizabeth Moore's parents were Thomas Moore and Mary Farrar. She was the daughter of Judith Jefferson and George Farrar. The Farrars came into Virginia in 1617. They founded the second English colony known as Farrar's Island.
And that's a French name.
Farrar? No, it's an English name.
Is that English?
It's English, yeah.
It was French.
Yeah. I do have French-Canadian ancestors on my mom's side. In fact, they can go back to Quebec in 1620. But in Virginia, I go back to 1617. Well, Farrar goes back to 1617. The lady that William Farrar married actually came to Jamestown in 1610 as a 10-year-old. So I can go back to 1610 in Jamestown.
1610 is when they first brought in the women and also the indentured servants.
Ah, okay. Good. Service record of John Dawes. Now, we see it spelt multiple ways. Spelling has evolved over time. Today, it's very standardized. Back then, not so much. Contemporary records in the 1700s, you see it spelt both ways, more commonly without the E, but you see it spelt with the E. My great-grandfather, the one who was born in Colorado, his birth certificate does not have an E. When my dad joined the Army, he decided that he needed to pick a spelling, so he went with the E, not realizing that a lot of the older records did not have the E. In fact, I remember talking to my grandfather, who said, "Oh, you can spell it either way, it doesn't matter." My dad's going, "No, no, no." So John Dawes came into the Commander-in-Chief's Guard on May 1st, 1777. He was at the Battle of Brandywine, the Battle of Germantown, Monmouth. He was at Valley Forge. We see him on the muster rolls in Valley Forge. And he was discharged in West Point in November of 1779. He was a private when he joined up. He was a corporal when he got discharged. I don't know at what point he was promoted from private to corporal.
This is my ancestor, William Logan. And his father was David Logan. His mother was Jane McKinley. He was born in 1706. David was in Armagh County, Northern Ireland. The Logans came from Scotland. In Scotland, they were spelled Lurgan, L-U-R-G-A-N, Lurgan. Hagalik Alpanakakam Kujak, Hanyalisakov Jahurstmianish. I speak Scottish Highland Gaelic also. You don't know what I said. At any rate, the parents immigrated to Philadelphia in 1730. I don't have my glasses on. 1737, they married in 1739. In May 1740, David received a Headright grant for land in Virginia. William Logan was born in 1745 in Tinkling Springs, Augusta County, Virginia. There's a really interesting church on Tinkling Springs. It's called Tinkling Springs Baptist Church. But tons of information, genealogical information, is from the baptisms from that church. And I have several relatives that were baptized in the records in Tinkling Springs. Sounds like what it probably was back then. William Logan was baptized July 16th, 1749 at Tinkling Springs Presbyterian Church. Presbyterian, not Baptist. He married Nancy Agnes McCoon. Again, McCoon being a good Scottish name. McCoon in Scottish Gaelic means son of the chief. So and they were from Scotland. But she was from Beaudesert County, Virginia, and died 1796 in Lincoln County, Kentucky. Now the Logans in Lincoln County, Kentucky started something at the same time Harrodsburg was started in Boonesboro up in northern Kentucky named St. Asaph's or Fort Logan. And that was founded by my Logan family. Benjamin Logan was a captain of the militia during the war, ended up being a general after the war and went up to Ohio to fight the Indians in Ohio. And my fifth great-grandfather was with him and served he served the entire war.
According to the map, it looks like you're in the Shenandoah Valley there.
Yes, up close to it. Yeah, Augusta County is a little bit on the south part of it.
That's what I was thinking.
Yep. And this is William Logan. Again, he married Nancy Agnes McCoon. He was a pioneer settler of Lincoln County, Kentucky, when it was part of Kentucky County, Virginia. And he was listed as a member of Company of Militia and Logan Stations, St. Asaph's, commanded by his brother, Captain, later General Benjamin Logan. He served in the Virginia militia from 1776 to 1784. So he had several services in many different regiments. Here's my ancestry. We start out here with me, my mom, my grandmother, my great-grandmother, and then we go back through Columbus, Hugh, Lincoln, Hugh, and William. And William was from a large family also. Almost all the families back then were probably anywhere from a minimum of 5 or 6 kids to another fourth great grandfather of mine had 17 kids. And that was a very large, that's my Mitchell side. So,
No birth control.
well, there was, but you didn't want to go through it.
We needed farm help.
Yes.
This is an enlistment sheet from 23rd Continental Regiment, November 29th, 1776. It's a pay receipt. And in the upper left is Benjamin Logan. Lower right is William Logan. It's hard to read these, but it's real and it's there. Here's a 12th Virginia from June 30th, 1777. He enlisted April 1st, 1777. Taken into Washington's Life Guards June 10th, 1777. And here he is, part of Washington's Life Guards. You see him down there in the lower left. That's the pay receipt for August of 1777. Here's another one from a muster roll from Washington's Guards from June of 1778 and also March of 1778. And here he is in July 1778 with Major Clark's Woods Regiment of Virginia. So he's back with they had the 4th, 8th, and 12th Virginias got combined into one regiment, and they referred to them as the 4th, 8th, and 12th. Why? Who knows? They probably had a good reason. And this is in November of 1779 in Captain Neville's company of the 8th Virginia. And here he is in 1784, and he had signed up for 3 years as appointed an ensign in Samuel McCutcheon's company of Virginia Militia. Qualified on March 20th, 1782, and that was where they went. Now, here we are at Valley Forge. No, we aren't. What happened? Oh, there we go. No,
So-
we skipped one.
Yeah.
Valley Forge. Washington's headquarters are right here. That's the whole complex of Valley Forge. The Life Guards were right there next to Washington's headquarters. They were the nearest troops to George Washington because they were his guard. They guarded his papers, they guarded his train, they guarded his person, they guarded his camp. They were with him 24/7.
How many men were in that unit?
It varied it started out around maybe 80 or so. And there were about 80 when our ancestors were taken in. It got up to being up to 120 to 140, but it varied throughout the entire history of the war. And after the next recruitment after ours, then they started taking other troops from other than Virginia later in the war. But the first unit that our ancestors was a part of were all Virginians.
So basically, you were the first Delta Force.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one way to look at it.
Yeah.
This is Washington's headquarters at Valley Forge.
If you go to Valley Forge, this building is still there today. I took this picture when I was there about 20 years ago, and the flag flying out here was Washington's personal flag. He flew it wherever he went. And it's that light blue color with the white stars in the background.
They built all kinds of huts all around Valley Forge, which is where the soldiers lived, like that.
So I took this picture with my son laying in one of the bunks in the huts. Because they were there and it was cold, they built these style cabins for the soldiers who were there at Valley Forge through the winter. And you can see how crowded it was, but it was much better than being in a tent outside.
Or not in a tent outside.
Yes.
And you might just call it rustic. Okay, here's the muster roll from Valley Forge.
So the muster roll from Valley Forge shows in December 77, February 78, April 78, and June 78. He was there present in the muster. Regiment commander for the regiment that he was in initially was Colonel Charles Lewis, which was the 14th Virginia Regiment. Brigade commander was George Whedon, and division commander William Alexander. And here he's in Washington's Guard, came from 14th Virginia, 2nd Virginia Brigade, 5th Division. And this shows his rank as a corporal.
And this is William Logan's record at Valley Forge. His rank was private, Brigade 1st Virginia, Division 5th, and Washington's Guard, Lifeguard, yes. Lifeguard in December 77 through June of 78. And this is, again, he was under the brigade commander Peter Muhlenberg, division commander William Alexander, lifeguards, and then he was on roll without comment. And that's a real common expression in all these records when you see them by all kinds of different people. On the roll without comment. So I guess they didn't do anything bad. These are the battles that the Guards fought in. And they started in the Battle of Boston in 1776, because that's when they were recruited, the first group. They fought in August of 1776 at the Battle of Long Island, Trenton, Princeton, Brandywine, Germantown. You can see whether it was a won or a loss. White Marsh, New Jersey, Valley Forge. Then they fought at Monmouth, which was the first time that the U.S. troops fought in a disciplined manner, because at Valley Forge, somebody named von Steuben from Germany came and taught the American troops how to fight, how to march, how to form, how to maneuver, how to do everything. And it was interesting because he didn't speak any English. He spoke German and French and a couple others. He had an American or a colonist who spoke French who would recruit and change or interpret his orders. The lifeguards were the first troops he trained. And then he sent the lifeguard troops individually to different regiments or companies to show them how to march. The lifeguards were von Steuben's guinea pigs, and they learned very well. And at Monmouth, the way they fought was the first time they fought in an extremely disciplined manner, and they didn't run off and run away. That was a very important battle in the American Revolution.
Quick question, now the Battle of Trenton, was fought the day after Washington crossed the Delaware?
Yes.
Correct.
So they basically caught the British by surprise. They were
Yep.
celebrating Christmas.
Yep.
Right.
And they ignored the fact that they had been discovered, and when the commander at Trenton was told, he ignored it. They were having too good a time. But he was warned by somebody that came in and told him, hey, those colonists are coming down here. Could well be.
Do you
And-
guys have any details on any of those battles? Because one of my favorites is number 2, the Battle of Long Island.
Well, Long Island actually was pretty remarkable how Washington was able to escape. He recognized that he was surrounded and needed to retreat. And suddenly a fog came in and obscured everything. And all the troops loaded on boats and they quietly went across over to the New Jersey side. And he was one of the last to leave. And he attributed it to Providence that the fog came
It
in.
was, because they kept the fires going.
Yep.
Because the next day they would have all been destroyed because they were surrounded.
Yep.
And it was called the Battle of Brooklyn Heights.
Yep.
And it's one of my favorite battles. And only a week prior to that, a bunch of horsemen had come in from New England. He had no horsemen. And these guys then stole the boats, and then with those boats and through that fog, just kept on going back.
Are you from Brooklyn?
Who?
You.
No, that. I take that as an insult. Staten Island.
Oh, Hamid Dooley.
New York is just a wonderful place.
New York?
You see the new mayor that they might be having, huh?
Oh, no comment.
Did the Guards only deploy with Washington, or did they deploy in any other fashion?
They did fight in battles with other regiments as part of the line.
But how far from Washington were they? Or was
Well, he
he was
was
present at every battle.
he was present at the battle.
Yeah. He wasn't present at every battle, but
He was-
when he was present, the Guard was there.
Yeah, if the Guards were in the battle, which they were in
Yeah.
those battles, he was nearby. But they also needed the troops to fight.
One other thing about General von Steuben, his manual of arms still exists. If you go on the internet and you do a search for von Steuben's manual, you can find PDF copies of it where he has very precise movements for, left shoulder arms, right shoulder arms, port arms, the various commands and what the soldiers' responses should be. So that was documented and still exists.
And it was used and printed during the Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things was he'd be talking in French, and every now and then he'd throw out a profanity in English. They didn't have to translate that, but he learned some profane words in English that he would use during the training. Okay, well, summary.
Go ahead.
Our ancestors were typical of the colonists of the period. Farmers, mostly, and they had experience. Some of them had fought in the French and Indian War. They had learned about fighting, but they also learned how to fight like Indians. A lot of the militia units, my other family from all my ancestors were in westernmost Pennsylvania, westernmost Virginia, westernmost North Carolina. They were all out west in the mountains. They were all Scots, and they went to the highlands as opposed to staying in the flats. They also had the Church of Scotland, which was different than the Church of England. If you were a member of the Church of England, you had to swear fealty to the king. If you were a member of the Church of Scotland, that wasn't a requirement to be a member of the Church of Scotland. So they maintained their Church of Scotland, and they went to the higher terrain rather than staying on the coast where Church of England was the dominant church.
Throughout the war, General Washington always wanted to line up and fight like the British and beat the British, try to out-British the British, but that never worked for him, and he came to the realization that it wasn't going to work for him. You can't out-British the British, but what did work was hit-and-run tactics, and it was very effective. As we approached Yorktown, for example, the Marquis de Lafayette he initially received a Major General commission that was intended to be ceremonial. He thought it was more of an actual commission. He was a 19-year-old when he met up with General Washington. And unlike most of the French officers who came to Washington, Washington had no time for them. He said, "I'm not here to teach, I'm here to learn." So Washington said, well, let's see what this young Frenchman can do. And he was one of the wealthiest Frenchmen of the day, and he was given progressively more and more command. And by time you got close to Yorktown, he was commanding troops, and they harassed the British troops. As from the interior coming back to Yorktown, they harassed them and took out about a third of them through harassing attacks. And that worked very well. And then when they were holed up in Yorktown, the British had an outbreak of smallpox, which was debilitating at that time. George Washington had smallpox as a young man and knew how dangerous it was and insisted that the U.S. Army get inoculated against smallpox. And at Yorktown, that was very effective because the Americans didn't have the outbreak of smallpox that the British did.
And that's the
it was
first
a
major
contributing factor.
inoculation really in American history.
Yeah.
After serving, they went back to their families and their farms and became good citizens. And they exemplified the desire and the effort that all of those who fought for and won our liberty and freedom. That was our ancestors. And if you have any questions, we'll certainly take them. And if, as you wish to, we have some stuff up here. We have 3 muskets. Like I said, that's the Charleville from France. The Brown Bess, which is the one I carry, is the English Brown Bess, 1762. A lot of the Americans used Brown Besses in the French and Indian War, and they were able to keep them after the war. So a lot of the militias and a lot of the colonists used Brown Bess muskets. And the other one is an American-made Brown Bess that was carried by a man named William Cloud from Dunlop County, Virginia. And that is an original musket. And his grandson died at the Alamo. Yes?
Didn't they have the first rifle?
They had rifled muskets. They did, but they were not very prevalent. A lot of the Americans used them out west where they shot game with them. But it took about 1 minute to 2 minutes to load one. The flintlocks, you could get off, the regulations called for 4 shots a minute. So if you got 4 shots a minute, 3 shots a minute, that's a lot different than one every 1 or 2 minutes. The rifles were effective, but they were very slow loading. and very expensive.
So
This was I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the cartridges they used at the time were these paper cartridges. They were actually invented by the Swedes during the 30 Years' War. The way it works is you have a pre-measured amount of powder and a ball at the bottom. The bullets were just balls at that time. You didn't get a bullet-shaped bullet until the Crimean War was when Mr. Minet invented the mini ball, or the bullet shape, which was then used in the Civil War. But these were all round. You had to have 2 teeth so you could open the cartridge. So you'd hold your musket in the one hand, you'd tear the top off by biting it, pour powder into the pan, close the pan, cast about, pour the rest of the powder down the barrel, and then put the rest of the cartridge, paper, ball, and all in there. Take the ramrod and use it to seat it. You don't really have to pank it down. You just want to seat it. Make sure it gets pushed all the way to the bottom. Got to put the ramrod back, because if you don't,
That's the most important part.
then
All you've got
You
is a
lose it.
12-pound club.
then you're ready. You go to full cock, and when the sergeant says fire, there's a whole long line who all fire at once.
See the sparks? That's what sets the powder off in the pan.
We'll
And there's
do
a
that
wee
again.
hole right there in the barrel where the pan is that sets the powder off in the barrel.
Would that still work now if he put it in?
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll be shooting this on Friday.
Yeah, Friday we'll be shooting them.
Yeah, it works. So
they've
3, 2, 1. So we're going to be leading the 4th of July parade in Foxfield, and we'll be giving a firing demonstration afterwards. And if anybody'd like to come up and check these out, you're welcome
Do you
to.
give your talk to kids, high school kids, or?
We do a lot of grade schools. We
Yeah.
have a program that's called a Patriot Chess program, and we go into a lot of mostly grade schools and middle schools. Sometimes at the middle schools, we'll do an encampment. We'll have a multi-day program where we'll march the kids around, put a mock musket in their hands and have them march so they kind of get a feel for it. And when we show up dressed like this and we have muskets, and some schools let us bring the musket in, some don't. We'll go along with whatever their rules are. The kids tend to learn more and retain it.
The first question is, are those real? That's the first question almost everybody asks.
Is it a public school, private school, Christian school, who allows this?
Yes.
Yes.
All
Yes,
the above.
all of the
All-
above.
all or
We've
some.
done programs in Denver City School, Denver School District Schools, Jefferson County Schools, Douglas County Schools. We've done charter schools. We've done a program for,
Down
in
in
Conifer, there's a
Colorado
group that
Springs we've
does-
been down to.
Yeah, we've done some in Colorado Springs, in Pagosa
Yep.
Springs. In Conifer, there's a program that we've tied in with where the kids are homeschooled, and they come to a facility one day a week for instruction, and we've given a program there. So all of the above.
Chip, Gary, where do you guys live in the metro area? Do you live close by, or?
I live in Castle Rock.
I live in Highlands Ranch, Gialtacook Croft.
All right.
That's the closest I can get to Highlands Ranch in Scottish Gaelic. If you want, there's a larger sheet that talks about the guards, which we'll have up here on the table. And there's a wee one if you don't want to read so much. But these are both available for you, and you can pick them up here.
No, and you might have said it, but I wanted to ask you, because you said Logan, so did your family start Fort Logan that's here in Colorado?
No, ma'am.
No,
No, we're not related to that Logan.
that's a different Logan.
A different Logan. But there's not many. I mean, there's only 20 or 30 million. I don't know. Yes.
Yeah, I had a couple questions. Now, the militia, they were civilian volunteers that augmented the Continental Army then?
They had their own units. Each county or an area in a colony would form a militia, usually by counties, sometimes by cities. And that militia would drill maybe twice a month. But if they were called out, they would go and serve for 30, 60, 90 days and go back home. The militias were very sort of informal, but they ended up fighting very, very well because they had learned, many of them from the French and Indian War, how the Indians fought. And a lot of the militias fought more like Indians than they did British troops.
They also brought their own weapons.
Yeah.
So most of them had
Some had rifles. Yeah.
So a lot of times they would be the sharpshooters. You know, the smoothbore musket, you know, a good soldier could get off 3 or 4 rounds a minute. Not so with a rifled musket, but with a rifle musket, you could be accurate out at 200 yards. So you could be a sharpshooter, whereas these, accuracy isn't their forte.
And one of the other things that was interesting about the times, officers were not to be targeted. They weren't supposed to shoot officers because if they had no officers to command the troops, it'd be an unruly mob. That was how it was considered. The Americans learned how to shoot officers. They learned from the Indians. And they also learned from their own experience. But if you shoot the officers and the British troops, they are not really self-motivated. The colonial militias and even some of the troops in the colonial army, there was self-motivation. If the sergeant got killed, some guy that knew as much as the sergeant did was a private, he'd step up and start doing things. So they had knowledge and they didn't wait around to be told, oh, maybe you ought to go over there and do that.
That's been a hallmark of the U.S. Army, though, throughout our history. I recall talking to people in World War II that the Germans were very frustrated. If they killed the officer, somebody else would step forward and lead the men. It wasn't like the German units that if you kill the officer, the men didn't know what to do. So that was a feature and a characteristic of Americans going back 250 years or more.
What was the length of their contract as far as serving? You know?
It varied.
It varied.
Because I know with the regular troops, there was the seasonal break when they had to go back and do follow-up.
Well, in the Continental Army, initially it was 1 year service. Then it became 3-year service, and then it became for the duration of the war. So it depended on that aspect of it. In the militias, you could be called up anytime you had required service during a month, but you might be gone for 6 or 8 or 10 months. There was no absolute.
If you look at the service record of my ancestor, John Dawes, he enlisted in March of 1777, and he was mustered out in November of 1779. So it wasn't a complete 3 years. It was more like 2 3/4 years. But he didn't take off. He was mustered out. And the conflict was still going on at that time.
Yep.
I couldn't quite read it back here, but what was the pay? Is it, a lot of those were pay stuff?
Oh, they don't show the pay, but it was maybe around as much as, well, it depends on when you started in the war. Early in the war, you got paid in English pounds. Later in the war, you got paid in continental script.
If they got paid at all.
If you got paid at all. Most of the time, pay was very, very remote and wasn't very consistent. And those things were listed as pay lists, but they were really more or less just roll calls.
They were patriotic and they wanted to serve.
They did want to serve. They'd had enough of the king and they said, it's time for him to leave us be.
Now, money in the colonies was a little more non-uniform than what we think of today.
Yeah.
The British didn't mint much money during the latter half of the 1700s. They didn't have a ready source of precious metals for it. So in the colonies, you had a lot of Spanish money. The Spaniards were, mining silver in Mount Potosi literally for centuries, and they would bring their treasure ships up the coast. They'd stop in Charleston or Baltimore. They would equip up, pay for their provisions with Spanish money, and then sail across to Spain. So there was a lot of Spanish money, and that was the one that the pieces of 8, and those you could legally cut into up to 8 pieces. That's where the term 2 bits for a quarter comes from, is 2 bits or
4
2
bits.
pieces. Yeah.
6 bits and then $1.
French money was in circulation as well, as was Dutch money, the thaler. So the thaler is where we get the term dollar today. So all of those were in circulation, and bartering was very common. So it wasn't like there was just English money and that was the only way that commerce could occur, was with shillings and pence and pounds. It was a multitude of different currencies and bartering.
What was the effective range of the musket?
You could, at 60 yards, if there was a house over there or a building, I could confidently hit the building.
Maybe hit the
Couldn't
building.
tell you where. With the rifle, I could pick out a window and put a bullet through the window. So because they aren't real accurate like that, you'd line up and you'd get a whole line of men and they'd all shoot at once.
And
So the idea is that
to
you have
hit
a wall
something.
of bullets going downfield and something's going to get hit.
And if you hit a soldier and he has a comrade or two, it might take two guys to help him get back behind the line. So you've removed 3 soldiers with 1 hit. That was very common.
The lines were pretty close together.
They were very close together, but they also would close
Pass
up.
these around. This is a musket ball. You can see how big they are. The Charleville is a 69 caliber weapon, so 0.69 inches in diameter. The Brown Bess is a 75 caliber weapon, 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Modern military weapons are either 22 caliber or 30 caliber. So these are much bigger bullets. So if you can imagine something like that passing through you, it's going to do some serious damage.
You were mentioned earlier that they used trumpet blasts and drum beats to
Give orders.
Orders.
Yes.
So I presume then the men went through some sort of a boot camp.
They went-
recognized.
They
It
drilled
wasn't
all the
boot camp.
time.
It was just they were drilled all the time, and they were trained all the time. And they got you. I mean, it was a common occurrence, and they knew what they meant. They would play for assembly. They would play for chow. They would play for form up.
To march, to turn
march.
right, to turn left.
Yeah, all these were. If you go through, there's probably I'm sure there are videos on YouTube that show how the drums, and we have a drummer that comes with us for a lot of our Patriot Chess, and he plays drums to announce what goes on. But they had drum calls and bugle calls for everything. Yes.
You showed your lineage, going all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Is it each of those individuals were sons and daughters of the American Revolution, or you did
No.
your lineage, found out, and registered them?
My dad did the genealogy. My dad was a cameraman for CBS. He did an interview one time with Alex Haley when Roots came out and was popular in the 1970s. And he thought, geez, with all the hardship, the difficulties that this guy did to trace his family, I ought to have a better chance of finding out about my family. And he knew his family went way back in Tennessee. So he started doing genealogical research and came upon John Dawes in a local library in Mecklenburg County, Virginia, that mentioned that he was in the Commander-in-Chief's Guard, which came as a big surprise to him. So he was the one who initially joined Sons of the American Revolution, and then I piggybacked on that about a year later, as did my sons. So growing up, I didn't know that, but my dad did the heavy lifting for the research.
Yeah, and I learned from my aunt, my dad's oldest sister. She was the firstborn in the family of 13, and she was born in 1908. And I talked with her, and it would have been in the early 90s. And I just asked her, and she told me the family history, and I wrote it down. Unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to have a tape recorder with me. I mean, it's a relative thing, but everything she told me, I've been doing the genealogy since then. And I've learned a lot. I mean, I have an ancestor on the Mayflower, a direct ancestor. My grandmother is a Doty, directly related to Edward Doty. So I go back to the Mayflower. And everybody else, I've got, all my ancestors were here in the colonies by 1760. So all my ancestry is deep in the colonies. And I have several others that were in the Revolutionary War. But Washington's Life Guards is really the tip of the iceberg.
Is it more difficult to find a woman ancestry?
Yes, but it's not as impossible as it used to be. But there's a lot of resources. It takes a lot of patience and time. The internet has been a big help to me once I started doing it. And I'm a member of the Castle Rock Genealogical Society. And they've done great work, and there's all kinds of experts there that, you know, they give us hands and help. But the internet has been a big thing. You have to go in and look at the county records in each state. And sometimes, it's, as Chip shows, the counties change names and the boundaries change. So you have to do more than just one county, because it might have been great big. Augusta County, Virginia was great big when it was first formed in the 1700s. It all shrunk down.
Is that
So-
part of the current Virginia or West Virginia?
Current Virginia. The West Virginia was, all my ancestors were east of West Virginia. But they were in Culpeper County, Augusta County, and they also were in, like I said, westernmost North Carolina, and ended up in Kentucky in the 1770s.
As Gary mentioned, the internet's made it much easier. You can go to Ancestry.com and there's a lot of records there, a lot of inaccuracies.
Yep.
When I went to Ancestry.com, now I have a copy of the birth certificate for my great-grandfather. He was born in Colorado. On Ancestry.com, it says he was born in Tennessee. He wasn't. In fact, I remember in the 90s, I called out to the county clerk in Conejos County. It's a pretty small county. And I mentioned that my great-grandfather was born in 1890, and I was looking to get a copy of his birth certificate. And she said, yeah, records are kind of scarce back then. Let me go look. And she put me on hold and came back about 2 minutes later and said, yep, got it right here, and sent it to me.
Where is that from?
It's down in the southern part of the San Luis Valley near La Jara.
No, I don't know where that.
It's down closer to New Mexico. It's the southern part of the San Luis
Southern part
Valley.
of the state.
Yeah, yeah. It's down south of Alamosa. If you're down by the Great Sand Dunes, it's south of there.
Okay, okay.
Very good.
If anybody would like to get up. and
Yeah,
take
we
a
got,
look at-
Yeah.
take a look at our stuff.
Hey, guys, thank you.
Shade Ovea.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you.
I thought I had two of these, one for each, so you guys are gonna have to split it.
Give it to Chip.
You guys are gonna have to split this.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much, I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Oh, very good.
If you want to, see, that's got the bayonet on it now.
Tag on to,
With that bayonet, that becomes a pretty formidable weapon.
yeah, yeah, that would work.
It wasn't as heavy as this, but everything seems so heavy.